we are recording. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Basic Steps to Starting a Business in New Mexico. This session is hosted by the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, known as the Technology Commercialization Accelerator, based here at New Mexico Tech, here in Socorro, New Mexico. Today's presentation will be led by Christopher Garcia, a business development specialist with the New Mexico Small Business Centers at UNM Valencia in Las Lunas, New Mexico. Christopher will guide us through the essential steps of starting a business in New Mexico, with a strong focus on market analysis. One of the most important pieces in building a successful and fundamental business. This webinar is especially helpful for innovators and entrepreneurs who are preparing to pursue grant opportunities. We will explore how to understand your industry, identify your target market, and evaluate your competition. These are critical components for both business success and funding readiness. You will also be introduced to powerful no-cost market research tools available to SBDC clients, including IBISWorld, Data Axle, and Census Business Builder. These tools can help you validate your idea, uncover opportunities, and strengthen your business case. We'll also touch on the core steps required to formally esteblish a business in New Mexico, helping you move from concept to execution with confidence. My name is Estefanita, or Steffi Rawlings. I serve as the Center Director for the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, Technology Commercialization Accelerator here at New Mexico Tech. Our focus is helping New Mexico residents protect and develop their innovations. We guide clients through questions like, what type of intellectual protection fits their idea? How does the patent process work? And how do you conduct a prior art search? We also connect clients with resources across the state for testing and commercialization. Another part of our work is cybersecurity. Protecting a business today goes beyond just protecting an idea. It also means protecting your data, your systems, and operations. We offer both cybersecurity webinars and one-on-one counseling. Before we begin, a quick reminder, this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the New Mexico Small Business Development YouTube channel, and the slides will be shared with you. We will have a Q&A session, so please put all your questions in the Q&A. In return for this no-cost session, we ask you to please complete a short survey that we will have right before the Q&A session. Your feedback helps us improve our programs and better serve our communities and our stakeholders. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Christopher Garcia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Steffi. I enjoy working with Steffi at the Technology Commercialization Accelerator, and we work together often, and we often talk about the needs of our clients. And Steffi and I wanted to put together this webinar so we could help the clients that work with Steffi who want to pursue grant programs, but don't have the business entity they need to and want to learn more about market research. So thanks for the opportunity, Steffi. I'm going to
Christopher.
Sure. I'm going to chat to everybody the follow-up email because I get a lot of questions. Are we going to get the slides? Are we going to get the links? So I want to give you the whole shebang right away, but stay for the whole webinar, please. I put that in the chat. If you have any questions for me during the webinar, please put them into the question and answer section on Zoom. And just so we could see if that's working, can you put a hi, hello, how are you into the question and answer feature, please? Stephanie says hi. Thank you, Stephanie. Jacqueline says hi. Giovanna says hello. Destiny says hello. Sally says good morning. Good morning. Terry says hi. Vivian says hello. And I got a whole lot more highs and hellos. So we know that's working. And if there's questions that we can't get to in this session, we could generate a report and we could follow up on those questions. So thank you for that. I might also ask you questions during the webinar so it doesn't seem like I'm just talking to myself in this office. And during the presentation, I might ask you to raise your hand. So just to make sure that feature is working, can everybody raise their hand for me? Perfect. Lots of hands. Some people are even so savvy they could change their hand color. Very good. I'm going to lower everybody's hand. And I want to warn you that I'm going to give you a lot of information during the session. So I'm going to open up the follow-up email. And I put some guidance on here because I'm giving you all this information, but how do you use it? What should you think about? So I want you to keep these 6 steps in mind when you're listening to this webinar. I want to show you how to validate your idea, identify your market, explore existing solutions and intellectual property, do industry and market research, explore commercialization and funding pathways, and build your business when you're ready. And one of the things you should do while validating your idea, please don't spend a lot of money and time on an idea that's not going to work. And the idea about validating your idea is seeing if this is a viable idea to go to market. So I'm going to lower that. And then of course, I put all many of the links we're going to talk about, the slides for this webinar. And I even included the marketing webinar I do with the worksheets. So feel free to peruse. Before we begin, let's go over some webinar ground rules. Again, write your questions in the Q&A and we'll answer them at the end when we launch our survey. And please stay till the end and take our survey because it helps Estefanita and me validate what we do for our stakeholders, the state of New Mexico and the Small Business Administration. No, don't worry about any background noise. Everybody's muted. Your cameras are off. You could be in your pajamas if you want. Feel free to get something to eat. I'll make sure the webinar is flowing again by having you raise your hands. Let's see. Here's a graphic of our center locations throughout New Mexico. The mission of the SBDC is to build skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses by offering no-cost confidential business consulting and low or no-cost training events like this one. And I'm going to tell you more about the SBDC in the next few slides. In the dynamic landscape of entrepreneurship, guidance and expertise can make all the difference. At the New Mexico Small Business Development Center Network, we understand the value of having seasoned professionals by your side as you navigate the complexities of building and growing a business. Our network comprises over 40 seasoned business advisors strategically stationed at SBDC centers throughout New Mexico. These advisors bring a rich tapestry of experience from various industries, honed through years of real-world challenges and triumphs. Aligned with our mission to develop skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses, our advisors are committed to empowering you with the knowledge and insights needed to thrive in today's competitive market. In addition to our mission-driven approach, we offer 2 main services: no-cost confidential business consulting and no or low-cost training events and webinars and workshops like this one. I put in the slides a link to the most recent schedule of our training events here. And then I put a link to our main website where you could request counseling. So everybody in this webinar has already signed up through eCenter is what we call it on our website. And if you've been routed to the correct center based on your address and location, and somebody should be in touch with you. If they're not, please feel free to go to our website, go to our locations page, and reach out to the center nearest you. And I put that information in the follow-up email as well. Here's the agenda for today's training. I'm going to tell you more about the SBDC, which I already started. Talk to you about our post survey. Basically, we're going to have a post survey at the end of the session, 15 minutes before we end, during the Q&A, and please participate in that. We're going to talk about the basic steps. There are 13, and everybody online should know that 13 is Taylor Swift's favorite number. So that's why there are 13. I don't know of. It's a coincidence, but I always like to mention Taylor Swift. We're going to review and demonstrate our excellent research tools and then take questions. And just out of my curiosity, I want to see how many attendees are here from Central New Mexico. I'm guessing a lot of people here are from Socorro, maybe Los Lunas. Oh, you're raising your hands. Perfect. How many of you are from outside Central New Mexico? And feel free to put in the Q&A where you're from, like if you're from Farmington, um, Lovington. Oh, I have somebody from Rio Rancho. Oh, we got a Farmington person. Thanks for coming. Las Vegas. Oh, beautiful Las Vegas. Roswell. Cool. Nice and hot down in Roswell these days. Las Cruces. Thanks for joining me from Las Cruces. Rainsville. I have no idea where that's at, but thank you for joining me. Los Alamos and Gallup. Thank you guys. We have a diverse group today. Now let's talk about the services of the SBDC. I think this is the fourth time I'll mention it, but we want to get that through to you. We offer confidential business counseling and lower no-cost business trainings. There are no limits to how much no-cost counseling you can receive. We have centers throughout New Mexico, so there'll be one close to you. And if you look at the graphic in the upper right-hand corner, that was created by our advisor and center. Now she's center director in Las Vegas, I believe. That's Brianna. But this is what we strive to do: renew, grow, launch, and start up small businesses. Hmm. This slide shows what we expect from our clients. My fellow business advisors and center directors want you to succeed. So you'll be assigned homework or further research. So please do the work necessary to succeed. We can't make decisions for you or offer tax or legal advice. We could only connect you to the information you need to make educated decisions. And part of making educated decisions is working with licensed professionals like attorneys or certified public accountants to obtain the best advice. And starting a business is a big investment, and we don't just throw darts at a dartboard when we invest our money in something. We do research, and or we work with professionals. I don't know a lot about finance, so I have my supplemental retirement managed for me by a professional. But if I'm ever going to spend money on something, I do research about it. You want to find the best thing. That's why we have ratings on Amazon. Very good. Now let's talk about starting a business in New Mexico. Before going into business, there are some important items you must consider. Will I make enough money to live? Will this replace my current income? Do I need the benefits offered by my current employer, like retirement plans, medical insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, or other important benefits? Can I replace those benefits by starting a business? You must also think about your educational background and skills. Do you have the correct educational background and skills to understand and operate the many facets of a business? This includes bookkeeping, accounting, human resources, supply chain management, sales, and that's just to name a few. You might have to hire somebody to perform these tasks, or you might want to consider a partner who could maybe complement your skills. Now let's go through the steps one by one. Step one is defining the business. This is the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and these questions are answered in a business plan. And if you need a business loan or you're applying for business funding, you must provide this to a lender or a funder. Many centers use a fill in the blank template, and that's in the follow-up email and the link I just chatted out. But there are many options for creating a business plan. There's online software like LivePlan. There's a link in that follow-up email to SBA's SBA.gov's lesson on writing a business plan. They have two options, the lean version and the full version, both which I think are pretty lean. And they have great training workshops. And we have more tools available at msbdc.org and through your local centers. I also want to point you through the New Mexico Economic Development Center's one-stop website for starting a business, and I'm going to show you that in just a second so you could see what kind of programs are available to you. So I included a link on this slide for the basic steps handout on which this webinar is based. It's put together by my old boss, Wayne Abraham. Let me see if I'm sharing. Yeah. And there's the 13 steps somewhere in here. Let me get rid of that. There we go. And then let's go to the Economic Development Center or the Economic Development Department's website. So let me share. I'm going to share screen 2. We're going to end the slideshow for a sec. And we're going to go to Programs and Services. And then this lists all the programs and services offered by the New Mexico Economic Development Department. So the first one I want to talk about that might benefit those on the call now is the Local Economic Development Act, or the LEDA program. So this program is a pot of money put aside by the state of New Mexico to reimburse those starting a business in New Mexico. It's kind of to attract or help people in New Mexico start a business for infrastructure improvements. And a lot of large businesses take advantage of this program, and we hear about them in the news like Meta, Amazon. But small businesses are more than welcome to apply for the program. They just have to have the money up front to make these infrastructure improvements, and they have to have the proper business that appeals to the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And that's a business in an industry for manufacturing, processing, or assembling of agricultural manufactured products. A lot of people with intellectual property want to go into manufacturing. A commercial enterprise for storing, warehousing, or distributing or selling products of agricultural, mining, or have been manufactured. That is more broad than you think. Say you're importing a product that you're having manufactured overseas, you need to store that in a warehouse, and that product could be based on your intellectual property. Or an economic-based employer, and the best way to describe this is a business that makes most of its money from outside of New Mexico. Non-qualifying entities, that's usually the restaurants, retail establishments, and things like that. And you just apply for this program. And I've had small businesses receive funding from this program before. I'll give you an example. Say you're a restaurant that wants to expand your operation to some manufacturing type process. So maybe you want to make um, manufactured food. You have a really good cookie product or cake product you want to have manufactured and put in the frozen food aisle at Walmart or something like that. That business is a manufacturing business. And say you have a building where you have the restaurant, you want an addition to that building, but you need to upgrade your electrical, your water, maybe some other technical upgrades. Maybe you need equipment, special equipment to do the manufacturing process. This is where that program could help. And it's usually a reimbursement program, and it's usually a 5-year term, and it's based on employment. And speaking of employment, let's go back one and let's look at the Job Training Incentive Program. This is another program where we hear in the news that a lot of larger or medium-sized businesses have applied for. But small businesses can apply, they just have to apply in the right way. And this program supports the training of an employee in the manufacturing sector for a certain amount of time based on their job code, and they use ONET Online to find that job code. So say you're that restaurant wants to expand to manufacturing, you're going to have a production line supervisor and you're going to have two production people making and packing these products. Those are all manufacturing jobs. They're typically higher paying jobs in New Mexico. And say you're going to retain those jobs for at least 5 years. They could help provide a reimbursement for time spent training those positions. So now let's go back one. My favorite of all the programs New Mexico offers is the collateral assistance program. So when you have intellectual property, a lot of times people want to manufacture. Manufacturing operations are typically large, medium-sized operations, and they take a lot of upfront money to start. And not a lot of people starting off, maybe you're going to tech and you're just going to graduate. You don't have a home. Typically, you don't have a home to put up for collateral. You don't have large assets to put up for collateral. And the state of New Mexico understands that. So they created a program a lot like the Small Business Administration Loan Guarantee Program, where a borrower who might not have enough collateral to apply for a larger loan um, could work with the state of New Mexico to take out a loan product that guarantees their loan and makes their loan more attractive to a lender. And they have a specific group of lenders that work in this program. Let's see. I think those are the main ones I wanted to go over now. But if you have any other questions, I'm pretty good with these programs, and I'd be happy to answer the questions I'm able to answer. Let's go back to our slideshow. And it even started from the right slide. We're doing good. I also put a link to a great worksheet we have on our website. It's called Test Your Potential as an Entrepreneur. And if you're wanting to work with a small business advisor at an MSBDC, it's great to fill that out so they could see where your strengths and weaknesses are in the entrepreneurial journey. There's the basic steps handout. Step 2 is to choose a business name, and there are legal considerations when choosing a business name. Steffi and I often talk about that when we're co-counseling. And it's very important to find a name that resonates with your target market, looks good on a website, social media, business cards, and other marketing material, is easy to spell and pronounce, and isn't trademarked or copywritten by another business. For example, there is a restaurant in Albuquerque called Dee's Cheesecake Factory. And if you grew up in Albuquerque, this was probably one of your favorite places for lunch or a sweet treat. The owners of Dee's Cheesecake Factory started this business after World War II, so long before the nationally known chain Cheesecake Factory. Fast forward to about 15 years ago, the Cheesecake Factory wants to do business in New Mexico, but they couldn't operate a restaurant in New Mexico with the name Cheesecake Factory in the business name because somebody many years before had trademarked that name and registered that name with the state of New Mexico as Dee's Cheesecake Factory. So this is a case where the small business owners, had the advantage over a larger business. But if you're gonna infringe on a trademark for a larger business, you're in for a lawsuit and you could get a cease and desist letter. So it's best to work with your technology commercialization accelerator. I put a link to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and they have a database called the TESS database. Let me see if we have this here. And I would just type in TESS here, TESS. Trademark Search System. I guess that's what TESS stands for. And let's see. Since we're talking about cheesecake, these are the businesses that have a trademark with cheesecake in the name. Not very many. And then I put a link to the New Mexico Secretary of State's office where you could register state trademarks. If you have a business and you never plan to expand outside of New Mexico, a state trademark might be nice for you. That would be more like Chris Garcia's barbershop or Rio Abajo, since I'm in the Rio Abajo barbershop. I don't want somebody in Socorro to have that name. I'm in Los Lunas. But if you're going to have a nationwide product or service, I suggest using the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And that's what Steffi's here for, and she'd be happy to meet with you and your local advisor and talk more about that. Step 3 is choosing and registering your legal structure. The legal structure of your business is its foundation. You must carefully consider how you wish to legally operate your business in New Mexico. The common business structures are on the slide. Everything but sole proprietors and partnerships must be registered with the New Mexico Secretary of State's office, and the paperwork is available solely on their online platform. More information about legal structures can be found in the document called Basics of Choosing a Business Structure or Business Entity, and that's in the follow-up email and link I chatted out to you, and there's a link for it here. I also put a link to the Small Business Administration's advice on choosing a business entity. And it's always great to consult with an attorney. And there's a resource for lower no cost legal guidance. It's called the Modest Means Helpline. And I put a link to that. It's somewhere in these slides. I'm going to open up our Q&A because there's a lot of questions that come up with business entities. And if you have one now, I'm happy to answer it.
Christopher Jackson put a question in. Is there a funding program who will fund for a lactation provider?
Lactation provider. We'll have to follow up on that one because I want to know more about what that business is. Is it a manufacturing facility? Is it a service? So we'll come back to that one. And I don't have anything on business entities now, but I want to talk about LLCs. Oh, somebody asked about what are the typical advantage of LLCs versus sole proprietorships. So the advantage of an LLC versus a sole proprietorship is the amount of liability you take on personally for operating the business and the versatility in how you could file your taxes. So limited liability companies are only recognized in the states in which they're formed, and the IRS does not view a limited liability company as a business structure. So when you're dealing on the federal level with the IRS, they're going to consider you either a sole proprietor, partnership, or a corporation. So a limited liability company is a little step forward from a sole proprietorship, and it gives you the versatility to still file your taxes as a sole proprietor, or you could elect to file your taxes as an S corp or a corporation. Um, and see, this all comes down to accounting, your personal tax situation. So getting advice from a certified public accountant or an attorney is vital on this one. I think the idea of a limited liability company is to distance yourself. Sole proprietors take on full liability for anything they do. Limited liability companies are like having a baby, and that you have that baby, and that baby takes on its own responsibilities eventually. And then let's see. Once you change your entity type, can you change back if need be? Yes, that's a great question. You can change back. So say you start a limited liability company and you want to go back to sole proprietorships, but it's a paperwork nightmare. I go through this all the time with clients who want to change back, start new, or something like that. But remember, you have 4 governing bodies when it comes to starting a business. You have the Secretary of State's office, if you don't have a sole proprietorship or partnership. You have the IRS, which issues you your EIN number, employer identification number. You have the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department, which issues your business taxpayer identification number, or CRS number is what many people might know it as. And then you have your local jurisdiction, If your business is home-based and your home's in Socorro County, you would get a business license from Socorro County. That's a bad example because Socorro County actually doesn't require a business license. Or if you're in the city of Socorro, the city of Socorro would issue your business license. So 4 entities, 4 pieces of paperwork you need to update, change, renew. So it's really good to go into this knowing what you want to do, knowing what your goals are before filling out all that paperwork. Filling out the paperwork to undo that paperwork, and then filling out more paperwork to redo something. What about incorporated? Sandra asks. Well, the corporations are entities separate from their owners. Owners in corporations usually have stock in a corporation, and they have to have a board, and that board is generally 3 people. Um, they're more for the more formal types of business structures. Tax planning can be a little bit more intensive for those business structures, and they're better for businesses that have numerous partners that could have shares in a business, or for those businesses planning to open up their business to investment or other types of funding. And Loretta says, talk about being an LLC and file as a sole proprietor. So Loretta, the IRS views you as a disregarded entity if you are a single member limited liability company. And that's the default classification. If you're a multi-member limited liability company, they view you as a partnership. And if you could elect to file, you have to file a special form. You could elect to file as a corporation. And you can't go back in time on that one. You have to keep on filing that way. In the future, um, each of those situations have different types of tax forms you fill out and different levels of complexity. So if you have any follow-ups to that, I'd be happy to answer them. Adriana says, what if I closed my New Mexico TAP account recently for my LLC? How will it affect anything, and can I reopen it? Did I just forfeit my LLC? So we talked about the 4 entities you're dealing with when starting a business, and the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department is just one of those entities. They don't govern limited liability companies. That's the Secretary of State's office. And as long as you're in good standing with the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department and the New Mexico Secretary of State, it doesn't affect the standing of your LLC. So that's a very general and political type answer to that question. Is it the same headache to go from SP to LLC, sole proprietorship to LLC? That's actually a little bit easier. Sole proprietors typically don't apply for an EIN number. Most of the time they should, but they don't. So the paperwork for switching from a sole proprietor to an LLC is pretty straightforward and easy. And that's the idea, to go from sole proprietorship to limited liability company as you grow. So that's not too very difficult. What can you share regarding 501c3 that is incorporated? Sandra, I'm not going to go into that too much. You could always email me and we could talk about it. But 501c3s have 3 governing bodies, I want to say, maybe 4. So 501c3, that's a tax designation you obtain from the IRS. But all nonprofit organizations are nonprofit corporations in the state of New Mexico through the Secretary of State's office. You could be a nonprofit corporation and not be a 501c3. So I will leave it there and we'll follow up on that if needed. And Loretta says, I have my adult children that help me run my LLC. I file as a partnership, or how, I'm guessing she wants advice on how to file. And that has a lot of what ifs and the way you've structured things, Loretta. So we might want to go over that one-on-one. Brandon says, what does it look like to get a tech platform scheduled with the GSA? All business requirements have been met and paperwork filed. What is the best passport, funding, or find partnerships locally? We might have to get back to follow up on that one because I don't have enough information on that one. And then Adriana says, what is the next step after an LLC And how do you create an organization? So there's LLCs are standalone entities. A lot of large businesses we think as corporations are actually limited liability companies, and they just elect to file in a different way. You don't necessarily need to step into organizing as a corporation, S corp or a B corp. But if you plan to go public, you would. And the next step for an LLC there's a lot of what ifs there, and we might want to go over that personally. So let's go to the next slide for now because we have a lot of slides to get through, and I want to show you a lot of research tools we have. And now that we're having fun talking about paperwork, let's talk about step 4, obtain your federal employer identification number. This is a unique identification number issued to your business by the IRS and is used on all federal filings. If you're a sole proprietor, some sole proprietors use their social security number instead of an EIN. But in these days, after the 2008 banking crisis, and then we had, another little mini crisis in 2015, banks are getting much more serious about people opening up business bank accounts with an EIN. They might not open up a bank account for you under a business name unless you have an EIN. So figuring out what kind of business structure you want to start is very important before you move on to this step. It's free to file for an EIN number, and the purpose of an EIN number is really to file your payroll taxes. It's the unique identifying number for a business at the federal level to remit payroll taxes to the IRS. But a lot of people use it as the unique identifying number for a business in general. And it's always a good practice. It's a business best practice to obtain an EIN. Continuing with paperwork requirements, step 5 is to register with the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department to obtain a New Mexico BTIN, Business Taxpayer Identification Number, but nobody knows it by BTIN. They all know it by CRS. That was the old combined reporting system. But you're going to see different references to this, a particular number on multitudes of different forms. So CRS is what many people know it as. Now we want to rebrand it as a BTIN. The applications, it's free to apply for one because, of course, it is your privilege as a business owner in the state of New Mexico to collect and remit gross receipts taxes to the state of New Mexico. The online application can be found at tap.state.nm.us, and TAP stands for Taxpayer Access Portal or Point. You can also fill out a paper application, and the paper application tends to be more straightforward in my mind and easier to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department, believe it or not, they have jumped into the 21st century. They have an awesome YouTube channel, and they have a YouTube presentation for new businesses. And these go over businesses that are non-employer businesses and employer businesses, because a lot of state employment taxes are also filed and remitted through this system. But if you don't have any employees, you're basically worried about corporate tax and gross receipts taxes. Does gross receipts taxes, not everybody's from New Mexico. We're one of the only states with gross receipts taxes. So if anybody has questions about what in the heck is this gross receipts tax, why we're collecting it, put it in the Q&A and I'll be happy to answer it. Stephanie asks, do you still need an EIN if you don't have any employees? So the short answer is probably. And isn't that an awful answer? So if you're a sole proprietor, you don't have any employees, you could probably get away, or a partnership and you don't have any employees, you could probably get away with not having an EIN number. But if you're an LLC or a corporation, you need an EIN number. Step 6 is to obtain your local business license and other applicable licenses. When doing business in New Mexico, you need a business license in the municipality or county where you sit your fanny. If you have a physical presence in, let's say you have a business that's home-based in Los Lunas, New Mexico, you need a Village of Los Lunas business license. If I'm a plumber and I'm going to Valencia County, that's the unincorporated areas surrounding Los Lunas and Belen, I would need a Valencia County business license. If I was going to serve the greater Albuquerque metro area, I would need a City of Albuquerque business license and or a Bernalillo County business license. It's very difficult to understand this concept, but everybody wants a piece of the pie. Um, and technically, to legally operate a business in different jurisdictions, that's different counties or municipalities, you need a business license. Terry asked a great question. She asked, what about an online business? So this is where we get into a gray area here. So Terry is operating an online business from her home, let's say, selling widgets from a website that she created on Shopify to other states. If she never has a sale from somebody in New Mexico, she technically does not need a business license. If she sells a product or service to somebody in New Mexico, you create a physical presence in the state of New Mexico, and you would need a business license anywhere you created that physical presence. Does Otero County need a business license if it's a home-based business? That's a good question, Jacqueline. So typically, yes. Typically, yes. There are some counties in New Mexico that don't require a business license or have other ordinances in those areas because that's their prerogative. For example, Socorro County, if you're in Lemitar selling green chili, you don't need a business license in Lemitar. You just need to get a gross receipts tax ID. Now, they recommend you get one. I hope you get one. But there's different rules based in different municipalities and different counties. Rio Arriba County has a weird tax rule about home-based businesses. Um, I'm not even going to tell you about that one. How about for Lee County? Most likely, yes, for Giovanna, for Lee County, you would need a business license if you have a physical presence there. Jeff says, can you register a business from a P.O. box? You cannot. Well, that's a halfway situation. So when you're saying register a business, we're talking about creating a business entity through the New Mexico Secretary of State's office. That's how I'm going to go about answering this question. And the New Mexico Secretary of State requires both a physical and mailing address. So you have to have that physical address in the state of New Mexico in order to register a business through the New Mexico Secretary of State's office. Jacqueline asks, what if your service is actually to visit clients in their home in Otero County? You created a physical presence and it's based on client location. So it would depend what jurisdictions in Otero County you're visiting. And if they require a business license, you might have to get one or many because there's no blanket business license. Remember, each municipality or county could have different ordinances and may require a business license. Adriana says, I live in Taos and I don't have a physical location. I just use my home location as an address for mailing and taxes. I want to do business here and in the surrounding areas, Angel Fire, Penasco, Cuesta. How do I get a business license? Ah, Adriana, I feel bad for you because you're going to have a lot of these small municipalities. I doubt Cuesta has their business. Anwar, our center director from Taos, is actually on the call with us today, but I doubt that Penasco or Cuesta have their business license applications online. So you may have to go visit um, state or municipal offices in these different places you want to serve to get the application or go through their process. So Sharon says, if you live in one county, Socorro, but travel to the state to conduct business, do you travel the state to conduct business? Do you need a local business license? Yeah, you do. Your situation is unique because you live in Socorro County. Maybe you live in Lemitar, Santa Claudia, someplace like that. You don't actually need a business license to serve people in those areas. But if you travel to Magdalena or Socorro, you would need a business license if you have a physical presence to serve clients in those areas. Can you use your home address for the business? Alana, you surely can. Laura says, I got collaborative workspace in Bernalillo County, but my home office is in Sandoval County. Do I need a business license in the two counties? It would depend where you create a physical presence and where you're providing services or goods, Laura. Like a shared working space, we have those in Albuquerque, like Free Range or Fat Pipe. And sometimes you could use those places as your physical business address, but if you're registered through your home, you would, and you're serving people in that jurisdiction, you probably do need a business license there. So yeah, this is a complicated one. I thank you guys for the questions. Step 7 is to report new hires to the New Mexico directory, and the link to the directory is on the slide, but this brings up human resource considerations to light. A very important part of any business comes with many legal and accounting considerations. You can always contact an accountant or attorney for specific information, but I included links to two good resources for learning more about employment procedures and laws. And those are the Department of Labor and the Department of Workforce Solutions, and the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I got it right on the first try and during the webinar. I'm so proud. And I included in the follow-up email a link to the business outreach site for the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions. Keeping with the HR trend, step 8 is if you have employees, you may need to complete Form ES 802. And this is a required form. I put a link to the forms there. I recommend just sitting down with your business service representative at the Department of Workforce Solutions and going through everything needed at the state level to comply with their organization. I could mention form names all webinar long, and it's not going to matter because it's always specific to the type of business and the type of employment you're going to provide. Something that I want to bring up here is a lot of people want to hire employees. We want to, employees in quotation marks, but want to pay them as independent contractors, 1099 providers. And that could get you into a lot of trouble with the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions and the Department of Labor. So it's important to know what your employee-employer relationship is with the people you are hiring and how best to pay them. And we could talk about that on a case-by-case basis. Step 9 is if you have employees, seek the assistance of an accountant because look at all the taxes on the screen. SUTA, FUTA, FIT, SIT, FICA. Oh, already got a headache. And if you aren't willing and able to deal with them, and a lot of these have monthly compliance, quarterly compliance, and yearly compliance. And I'm talking federal, state. There's two different forms you have to file, and they have reporting requirements on those bases. And that's just the federal. We're not even talking about the state. The state you have, I think you have the option to pick how you want to file, monthly, quarterly, semi-annual. But it's a lot of reporting. If you're late on some of these reports, you're going to fund my retirement $5 at a time through the state of New Mexico. And if you want to learn more about your federal tax obligations, I put a link on the screen to the IRS Self-Employed Individuals Tax Center. It's awesome. If anybody complains about the taxes they pay to the federal government or the IRS, this is the one benefit you're getting is the IRS Self-Employed Individuals Tax Center because it goes over everything you need to know and more. Step 10 is to seek assistance from an attorney. We talked about some important legal landmines in starting and operating a business, and attorneys are licensed to answer those questions. So I included a link to the State Bar of New Mexico. That's the organization that licenses attorneys. And they have a great search tool. So say you want to find somebody who works in intellectual property law because you want to file a patent or trademark. And you want to say I want to stay local. Let's see. Let's say I want to stay local in Valencia County. I could search based on those two characteristics, and it gives me a list of attorneys who have passed the New Mexico State Bar. They're licensed to practice law in the state of New Mexico. And it tells you where they're located. So Arapahoe County, sounds far from here. So does Harris. So I don't see anybody practicing IP law in Valencia County, but close by we have Bernalillo County. And I was going to see if Peacock came up. there's Larry Donahue. And if you click his profile, it tells you um, what typically it tells you what his business is. So this is law for small business, who the attorney is there, where it's located, gives you an email address, website, contact information, and it tells you more about what their practice areas are and their practice locations. Another great service from the State Bar of New Mexico is the Modest Means Helpline. And let's see if the Modest Means Helpline wants to open for me. So this organization was created based on legislation. They put together some money to help fund this because everybody was calling legal aid. And legal aid is here to help people with criminal matters who can't afford an attorney. And somebody in politics said, well, what about the people who want advice on a civil issue, not a criminal issue? And starting a business falls under civil issue. They created this Modest Means Helpline. It's staffed by two great attorneys. They're very communicative. Most people on the line today, I think, would qualify for their services. 500% of the federal poverty guideline. So you have to make more than $79,800 for a household of one before you can't qualify for their program. So this is the best resource out there. If you have a legal question, you don't want to pay an attorney a $5,000 retainer. Uh, call this call this program, get onboarded with them. And if you have general basic questions that you don't want to go to an attorney for, or don't even know what type of attorney you might even need for your particular situation, give them a call. And then, of course, I put a link to the New Mexico State University's Patent and Trademark Library. Steffi, who's there now? What's his name?
His name is Nathan Camp.
Nathan Kemp. And if you work with Steffi or me and you have questions about researching a patent or trademark, we always send you to the New Mexico Patent and Trademark Library, where they have a librarian devoted to helping people research patent and trademarks. So remember, when we're trying to validate our idea, it's always good to see if there's something else out there that's already, taking market space and maybe my idea is not needed, or is there something I could add to with my idea? Things like that. And that's one of the best resources for you. Step 11 is to review. And if there's anything you're going to do today, and if you want to be an employer, I'm telling you, if you want to be an employer and have employees, look at this guide, the Americans with Disability Act guide on employment. Um, this is one of those legal landmines for business owners. Take a look at it, see what's required of you. And that's the same for state regulations as well. Step 12 is to establish a business bank account. It's best practice to keep your personal finances separate from your business finances. If you have a bookkeeper and you're intermingling finances, you're going to give them a stroke, and it makes your bookkeeping processes so much easier. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, they have a great learning module for small business owners. It's called FDIC Money Smart for Small Business. If there's any one little additional learning opportunity you could take away from this webinar, go see what the free resources are on this at this FDIC Money Smart for Small Business program. It's put together by bankers. It gives you more than enough information to be money smart about small business, and it's free. It's free. Step 13, my Taylor Swift's favorite number, is have adequate business insurance coverage. This slide shows the common types of insurance coverages, and I recommend you research your options with an independent insurance broker. Oftentimes, independent insurance brokers sell insurances from many different companies and tend to be less biased when it comes to giving you the best recommendation for different types of insurance. You can learn more about insurance by visiting hitchcox.com/SBDC. Hitchcox is one of the largest insurers. I'm going to, preface this. They're one of the largest for-profit insurers in the nation. They used to insure like Spanish galleons coming over from Spain. Um, and they may want to sell you something, but they are a big sponsor of our America Small Business Development Center conference, and they offer free learning resources just for SBDC clients, which I appreciate. And they break it down into easy to understand information. If you're wondering, based on all of this, what is the best or what most purchase type of insurance for a small business? General liability. And if you're a service provider like an accountant, attorney, errors and omissions. Now we're getting into the fun part. We're going to talk about some research tools to help validate your idea. So the first link on the slide is for the business plan lesson on the SBA's website. And they also have a great program, and I put this in the follow-up email and link I sent to you. They have a online learning program called SBA Ascent. Sometimes their website's a little hard to use, especially if you're using a browser like this one. And it used to be just for women. Now it's for everybody. And it replaced a lot of their old learning videos that they used to have online. If you want more information on a particular topic or want to learn more about business planning in general or the different aspects of a business, it's free. Sign up for the SBA's, sign up through the SBA and take advantage of your taxpayer dollars. I've been talking about business planning. But most people are like, what the heck does a business plan look like? Where do I even start? Do you have an example? And Life Plan, which is, by Palo Alto Software, they want to sell you something, but they have a lot of sample business plans on their website right now. Custom quilt. And it shows you what their executive summary looks like, what a mission, keys to success, objectives, and whatnot look like. So if you don't, you're wondering, where do I even start off with this? Take a look at that link. The third link, this is one of my favorite tools for market research, and it's free. It's absolutely free. It's from the census. It's called Census Business Builder. You don't need to make an appointment with your SBDC advisor to use it, but let me tell you, it's if you don't know how to use it and you're not tech savvy or stat savvy, you might want to make an appointment with somebody and get their expert advice on this. But what Census Business Builder does is I have a nice little thing I wrote up about it here. This is a no-cost database that allows you to find demographic information about your customers, census stats about businesses in your industry, and estimates of yearly household expenditures, which is my favorite. So just so I'm not always using Los Lunas, let me look at the Q&A. And somebody Q&A me, what town in New Mexico would you like me to look? And please, let's not say Jal, New Mexico. We're not going to have a lot of information on Jal. We won't even have a lot of information on Los Lunas. So let's see. Well, Charlene was the first to get in there, and she gave a good recommendation, Rio Rancho, New Mexico. And they have two zip codes. And I think that Tularosa, Audrey, I'm sorry, we're gonna find very little information about Tularosa. And Sandra, Las Cruces, we might find some information, but not a lot. And this is a finicky database, but it's gold when you learn how to use it. So there's the city of Rio Rancho, and then of course, Rio Rancho is located in Sandoval County. You could also pick Sandoval County if you wanted to see places outside of Rio Rancho proper. So this is a very strong database. It allows you to look at a lot of different factors that the Census Bureau collects data about. Using this map is hard for me. I'm not like a map, find things by map type person, but they let you create a report. And that I'm more of a read it and learn type person. And this report's a lot easier for me to understand. And I bet it would be a lot easier for people on the call to understand. So let's look what a report for Rio Rancho, New Mexico shows us. Socioeconomic characteristics, housing characteristics, and employment characteristics. And we're thinking now, how does this relate to my invention or my intellectual property? Well, we start to see where you might be able to sell that intellectual property if you wanted to start a retail operation. With intellectual property, a lot of times there's a licensing option. This might not be something you want to take on for manufacturing or retailing. And you could work with a business who might be interested in licensing for a fee, of course, your intellectual property. But it gives you an idea of the area. So, we're in Rio Rancho, we want to start a business. Um, Not giving us a lot of data on businesses like ours. That's one of the downfalls with this database is if they don't have 100 results in your area, they're not going to report it. But my favorite part of this is the consumer spending. So say I have a great new invention. I want to start off in Rio Rancho. I have let's use one of our local companies out of Albuquerque. They make special shoes, and you want to gear these shoes towards, they're probably higher income people, but this is the average household expenditure per year in this area. So in Rio Rancho, the average household per year is spending $112.52 on shoes. I don't know. I don't know if we need a famous footwear in Rio Rancho, but this is a tool that could help you decide on that. What are people in Rio Rancho really spending? They're pretty frugal in Rio Rancho. They have high incomes there. Look, the average household income is $94,000. How much are we spending compared to that, I wonder? Though the average expenditure is $94,000 a year per household. And let's see what the average household income is. If it tells us somewhere. It tells us somewhere in here, and I bet it's closer towards oh, okay. Median household income, 89,000. So we're spending more. We're consumer culture here in the United States. What are they spending money on in what business can I start in Rio Rancho where I could get some money? Household snacks? You're spending $2,722 a year per household per year on snacks in Rio Rancho. My God, you're snacking in Rio Rancho, aren't you? You're spending more on snacks than you are on dairy products. Let's see what else we could glean from this. Lawn and gardening. So you're serious about your lawn and garden in Rio Rancho. Household improvements. You like to keep up your houses there in Rio Rancho, don't you? Gasoline. Yep, you're commuting out of Rio Rancho. I could tell you that much based on that. And it's very interesting if we could find stats about businesses like yours, if they have those available. It decided to load now. So this tells you about how many types of businesses in these different sectors there are in this area. And it could help you gauge, is this a good place for manufacturing? It is. Rio Rancho looks like a great place for manufacturing based on the number of businesses. This is for my service providers out there, especially if you're like a plumber, contractor. You want to go into a place with expensive homes, $310,000 that are old. How old are these homes? 2000. Los Alamos is the great place for expensive homes that are very old. I would love to be a plumber in Los Alamos. So now I showed you some Census Business Builder. Let's go on to the next one because these are the bread and butter of what Steffi wanted me to show you. Okay, traffic counts is another great research tool. Those are put together by the New Mexico Council of Governments and MCOGs. And if you are in the Albuquerque metro area, they have an interactive map. If you're outside of Albuquerque, they often don't put that in a map format. It's in a report format. But that's your agency to get that. So say we wanted to start a retail facility in Albuquerque on, say, the Northeast Heights, off of Academy Road and the freeway, just off the freeway. We could tap these areas, and if they turn green, they do collect information about those areas. And it tells you the average weekday traffic and the average daily traffic. And my God, Academy has a lot of traffic. Less than they did in 2007, but still. Everybody's going to Sprouts Market, I guess. McDonald's. But this could help you decide where to put a business where there's a lot of traffic, especially if it's a retail type business. If you have an invention about traffic, maybe this might be a great resource for you. In that follow-up email, I also put information about the Department of Labor statistics. And one of the most interesting stats that they keep track of is inflation rates. So they have a data set, and it's usually based on a I forget what they call it. One of the years, like a base year. And when I was looking at it, it happened to be 1982, and I was looking at gas prices. And it tells you how much gas prices have increased since 1982 from the different years and months. And that might be interesting data for you. It was interesting for me. I put that link in there. Let me see other free resources. I'll think of some more free resources for you guys, but I want to talk to you about resources you have access to as SBDC clients. That would be IBIS World, and I still call it, it's always going to be Reference USA to me, but they call it Data Axle now. So I want to show you some of those. And let me look at my participants. How many of you are either associated with a college, a student at a college, and we're talking Tech, UNM, NMSU, Western? At least four of you. So the library at your college usually has these available to you, if you're or your local library, but the SBDC does for sure. Let me end my slideshow just for now. Let me open up library.unm.edu, go to their databases, and by subject, we're going to go to business management. And let's look at IBIS World. The hardest part is remembering your password. And we're going to look at these industry reports. Does anybody have an industry where they might have intellectual property already, or going to have intellectual property? And this is where I get into it with my innovators. They have intellectual property and they don't know if they're manufacturing, if they're retailing, if they're licensing. And that's very important for these reports because we want to see a report that faces your customer. And if it's wholesaling, we want to see a wholesale report. If it's retailing, we want to see a retail report. Software as a service. I like that one. Thank you, Brandon. Software publishing in the US is probably the closest report we're going to get. I don't want at a glance. I want the full report. And this is probably the best tool you could use for figuring out, is there a market for my product? Is it worth manufacturing a product based on my intellectual property? Is it worth licensing my intellectual property to a bigger company? And let's see. At a glance, software publishing in the US has a revenue of $567 billion. It employs about 1 million people and it's growing tremendously over the next few years. There's 17,079 businesses and it's growing tremendously over the next few years. It accounts for $66.3 billion of profit in the US and it's gone down. Profit margin is 11.7, so we're at the dime machine at the casino. We get 11.7 cents on average across this whole industry in the United States per dollar we bring in revenue. It gives us some major players in this industry. Key external drivers. This is a great one because it tells you what happens in the economy that makes this business grow or decline. Product or services. So these are the things, these are the aspects of this industry that people seek out in the United States. So application software publishing, system software publishing, technology consulting and training, custom design and development, resale. So you're probably in one of these two. So you're serving the largest markets. Gives you some key takeaways, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats, SWOT analysis. And my favorite part of this, there's a lot of narrative in here, and I know my innovators love to read research. But my favorite part is, who in the heck is my market? And the biggest market for software publishing is businesses, not so much households. So I created this great software. Should I license it to a larger business? Is it geared towards business? Or am I going to try to go at it myself and go directly to the consumer market? Or is this more geared towards government? So that's IBIS World in a nutshell. One of my favorite, and if you come to advise with me, I always pull this report when we first meet. Next is that Reference Solutions, Reference USA, Data Axle, whatever the heck it wants to call itself, right? So we want to do some research. We want to see businesses like ours, and this database is organized by NAICS codes. North American Industry Classification System codes. Doesn't sound awfully boring. So software. I'm going to use that example. And it breaks it down into am I a wholesaler? Am I a retailer? Am I a service provider? How would we classify this business that you're creating? We're going to do computer software publishers just because I don't want to go too much into the weeds with these. So maybe we want to go to the advanced search. We want to search for those software publishers in the United States with under 1 to 4 employees. We're a small business. There's a lot. Of course, if we were working one-on-one, we would narrow this down better for you into the area where you want to serve. But this database has a lot of information. It tells you what are the things that this business also does. So they deal tires. I don't know if let's take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if they're dealing tires and making software. Let's see. Maybe they do. Maybe they make and have intellectual property on a piece of software that tells you your tire pressure or something. And it tells you about how many employees they have, how much they make, how much they spend on certain aspects of their business, who the business owners are. And most people with intellectual property have ideas that benefit businesses rather than consumers. So we could find a list of businesses who operate in the industries that could be best served by your intellectual property. Might want to license it. We could, if you're retail, we could find either consumers or businesses that you want to retail your invention to, so on and so forth. So that's what I wanted to show you there. And I see we're running out of time, so I want to leave some time for questions and answers.
Christopher, this has been very good. Good information. Are we going to go Q&A or he's done?
Yeah, let's open up the Q&A. And if you want to launch, let me launch the poll so we give enough people enough time to answer the survey.
So because we provide this no-cost service, we really appreciate you completing this survey, as this gives us information on how we're doing to report back to our stakeholders. So please complete the survey. And you'll hear me say that quite a bit while you're doing it. I want to thank Christopher for continuing to support our technical community commercialization accelerator center. Christopher is the business advisor here in Socorro County and Valencia County. We do have other, we have 18 centers throughout, 19 centers. My center's the 19th center. We have 19 centers throughout the state of New Mexico. And each center serves different counties. So if you're not from Valencia or Socorro, we have Anwar from Taos. He's a business advisor. He's online. We have John Young from Gallup. He's online. We have Janice from Los Alamos. She's online. So we do have some of our business advisors online with us, and thank you for attending.
Yes, thank you. And I'm dying to know, I'm going to allow Anwar to talk. Can you get a business license online in Penasco or Cuesta? And then let me look at I launched the poll. Please take our survey. And let's look at the Q&A. Jeff asks, can raw land with an address serve as a business location? I think you're getting into a gray area there, Jeff, because when you're registering your business with the New Mexico Secretary of State's office, they're going to ask you for a registered agent or the legal point of contact for the business, and they have to have a physical address. Most single member LLCs list the business owner as their registered agent, and if somebody's going to serve a legal notice to you, they're going to end up on a raw piece of property that's not going to look good for you. You could pay people to be your registered agent, and you could pay to have a business address. And if you want to discuss that more, we can. So Adriana says, how do you specify to planning and zoning what part of your home is for business if you don't have a specific space? Adriana, they don't ask you unless you're going to do something in your home that they might be concerned with, like you're going to manufacture something from the home, or you're going to provide services from the home. You might have to apply for conditional use of the business. But if you just tell them you're using your home as a home office, they probably won't need you to elaborate on any of that. Alana says, can you fund your business using personal funds and count as equity? Well, Alana, that's exactly what happens when you use your personal funds to fund your business. And you could also lend your business money. But there are some IRS, legal technical things that you have to worry about. Sally says, super interesting and helpful. Thank you. Well, thank you, Sally. Thanks for attending. Adriana says, thank you so much. Yep, it was a lot of information, Adriana. So in that follow-up email or link I put in the chat, and I will send it to you directly as well, everybody who attended. Not today, but probably tomorrow.
Christopher Anwar has his hand up, so you can.
Oh, Anwar, you go ahead.
Oh, hey, Chris. Hey, that was a great question. To answer that question, no, Peaker East does not have, it's not an incorporated area of the county, so it doesn't have its own business license. sorry, Penasco, but Picaris Pueblo, if your business or if you're a tribal member, you're located on Picaris Pueblo, they do have their own business permit to get. But just to clarify, Penasco does not. And up in Cuesta, if you're within the village limits, and I'm sure you mentioned this, but I like to use a tax rate map on New Mexico Tax and Rev. That website's tax.newmexico.gov. And look for the tax rate map there. You can see the boundary of Cuesta, and if you're within the boundary of Cuesta, and it's pretty close to the village boundary itself, then you do and would get a permit from the village of Cuesta. If you're outside of that, you're going to be in the county, and the next closest incorporated area up there is Red River. So I hope that answered that question.
It does, and it goes to show how different places in New Mexico have vastly different regulations depending on where you physically start your business.
Absolutely.
Thank
Happy
you.
to work with whoever that was who asked the question.
Thank you, Anwar.
Thank you, Anwar.
Araceli says thank you. So remember, this is a very general overview of how to start a business, and Steffi wanted me to do this for you guys because a lot of times you have intellectual property that you want to apply for funding programs like SBIR, STTR, LIDA, JTIP, but you need to have a business entity created before you could apply for these programs. And if you haven't, you could visit our YouTube channel, and we have the representative from the New Mexico Small Business Assistance Partnership. She did a webinar for us not too long ago, and she says you need your gross receipts tax ID number before you could get assistance. And then we wanted to find tools you could use to validate your idea or plan your business. And that's what I tried to give. But I put a little bit of guidance in there because I threw everything at you. But I put 6 little words of guidance for you in that follow-up email and follow-up link. And I want you to, follow that format, ask questions, and think about starting a business in that format so you don't get overwhelmed.
There's a couple more in the Q&A, Christopher.
Let's see. Kathleen says, what can be the difference between having a business in a town versus county? But wherever the jurisdiction falls. So say you're in Los Lunas here, we have a road called Don Pascual Road, and it's intersected by Tondre Road. Tondre Road is the border between the county and the city. So people to the north of Tondre are in Valencia County. People to the south are in the village of Los Lunas. And so if I'm serving people in Los Lunas, I might pass that boundary and serve somebody in Valencia County. It just depends where the jurisdictions are located, and your local municipal planning and zoning office or county office could give you good advice on that. Jacqueline, I don't understand what a lactation provider is. I know we have a lactation room at the university.
Do you want to allow her to talk?
Yeah, put it in the chat. We have to be one-on-one to talk about that, Jacqueline. And then Destiny says you submitted the quiz. Unfortunately, you have to go now. Well, you have a great rest of your day, Destiny. Brandon says, what does funding timelines look like realistically if all ducks are in a row? Well, Brandon, put in the Q&A. Are you looking for a loan? Are you looking for LIDA funds? Are you looking for SBIR funds? Or I'll just answer you. If you're looking for a loan, you're looking at maybe a 2-month turnaround. If you're looking for SBIR or LIDA funds, you're looking at maybe a 6-month journey. And Steffi, if you could give any insights on that, what do you think?
I know, let's see, some of the funding, I don't know that, Christopher. I don't work with that funding part.
I've worked with people, and it's not a fast funding. When you're working with the government, nothing's fast funding there, Brandon.
I know I have a client tried to get into one of the programs, and he's still he's looking for June, and so he's applying for stuff now. So he's looking to be ready in June, and it's like time to be applying for it now. So
I know that's a big question, Brandon, that makes a lot of people very frustrated. Sally says, are there loans for a build out to start a daycare center? Ooh, Sally. There is actually a loan program through the New Mexico Finance Authority that will lend you up to 5 million to fund either the creation or expansion of a daycare facility. Go on to the New Mexico Finance Authority website and look for that loan program. Um, or of course, if you wanted a private loan or an SBA guaranteed loan, you could go through a traditional bank, credit union, or a nonprofit lender like the Loan Fund West or DreamSpring. But great question. Perfect. I love to put out that loan program there. Let me see if I could find it. Put it in the chat. There's a lot of this government help is buried deep on a website somewhere. Let me just chat this to everybody. It's the loan program for daycares.
I think the poll is completed.
Okay, let's end the poll. I'm going to thank everybody one more time for attending. You got my follow-up link to the follow-up email that you will get. Thank you, Steffi, for providing me this opportunity and always working well with our center. Is there any last words from you, Steffi?
I want to thank everybody for attending our webinar. I want to thank Christopher Garcia for putting the presentation on for us. Again, the TCA is here to help you with your intellectual property, and we also provide cybersecurity awareness. All our centers provide assistance with business startups, existing businesses, and exiting businesses. And we're here, no cost confidential counseling. So thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in our counseling sessions.